This is a Kayhan TV sports break. But there will be no sports break today. Yeah, the Clippers beat the Spurs to get closer to second place. The Celtics and Knicks won in the East. The Magic lost and the Pacers were disappointing. But I'm going to go off script and take some time to comment on George Karl's book and what he said about Carmelo Anthony and Kenyon Martin. I usually don't like to comment on stories like this. I'd much rather break down game footage and talk about yesterday's games and what teams can do to improve and win games, but this seems to be a hot button issue that everyone seems to have an opinion on, so I've decided to jump in as well. If you're one of the few who don't know by now, these are some of the quotes that will be coming out of Karl's upcoming autobiographical book. Here's the first one. Carmelo was a true conundrum for me in the 6 years I had him. He was the best offensive player I ever coached. He was also a user of people, addicted to the spotlight, and very unhappy when he had to share it. He really lit my fuse with his low demand of himself on defense. He had no commitment to the hard, dirty work of stopping the other guy. My ideal, probably every coach's ideal, is when your best player is also your leader. But since Carmelo only played hard on one side of the ball, he made it plain he couldn't lead the Nuggets, even though he said he wanted to. Coaching him meant working around his defense and compensating for his attitude. There was also this stinging personal jab. Kenyon and Carmelo carried two big burdens, all that money, and no father to show them how to act like a man. Whew, okay. Now, before I say whether I think he's right or wrong for doing this, I'm going to tell you what I gather from this, because the consensus reaction has been one of shock that Karl would break the locker room code and air out such dirty laundry in public. But this is what all this tells me that I haven't been hearing anyone else bring up. Number one, it's obvious that Karl still carries all this deep in his heart and never was able to deal with it on a personal level or with his players. There is an extreme amount of hostility inherent in these comments, so he is angry, and the fact that it's still with him after all these years says just how angry he was with his players at the time when he coached them. Number two, why would that be? I would say that George Karl was and is very proud of his profession as a basketball coach and took it very seriously. And the fact that he never won a championship, I'm sure, is very scarring to him. And like it or not, the fact is that the 2009 Denver Nuggets were his best chance to win a title. The Denver Nuggets should have beat the LA Lakers in the Western Finals. They had the talent to do it. They just weren't the more disciplined team. And on a personal level, I'm sure Karl doesn't place the blame on himself there. And if they did get past the Lakers, the Magic in the finals would have represented his best chance to win a title. A far better one than when he faced Michael Jordan in 1996 coaching the Supersonics. There is no doubt this is important to him, and he holds a grudge against the players on this team who he feels held them back. Look, George Karl, all he had is basketball. Carmelo is going to be fine if he never wins a title. He will have his parties and his friends and his weed. But George Karl, all he had was basketball. There was no wild late night parties for him. He was in his office watching film, trying to get his ragtag group of talented players to play well enough to win a title. That's all he cared about. So in that case, his anger can somewhat be understood if you feel some compassion on his end. Okay, number three, and lastly, the personal stuff. The stuff about Carmelo and Kenyon not having fathers and how it affected their lives from his point of view. I will say, yes, he should not have gone there. It's just not his place to open up wounds like that. At that point, it does become fighting words, whether he is right to some degree or not. What we are witnessing is a failed relationship. All of this should have been aired out in private, maybe over a nice group therapy session, and George Karl should have moved on from it then and there. But the fact that he never dealt with this built-up animosity he had toward his players led to what we are seeing now. This was a lack of communication, plain and simple. We can all learn from this. Whether, like in this situation, it's a coworker or a family member you can't get along with, or a loved one, we have to communicate how we feel. We cannot just let things build up inside of us because they will come out one way or another, and usually it would be in a destructive way. It's difficult and not everyone can do it, but we can try. Write out your feelings if you feel you're not going to be able to convey them properly in person or on the spot. So in a way, I'm the only one so far that I know of that is giving George Karl a pass. Not saying he was right, but I understand that he has his demons of his own and is not aware of how this should have been handled back in 2009. It slipped through the cracks. It happens in life. Some relationships can never be mended, but there is a proper way to handle things, and this wasn't it. And I really don't think he did it because he wanted to be controversial enough to sell more books or make more money. He's already a millionaire. He really feels all this anger from the past, and it's kind of sad. Well, that's one man's opinion. I'm Kayhan. This is Kayhan TV. We'll be back around sometime soon. Till then, communicate respectfully. It's healthy for you and for those around you. Peace.